TV, radio, print, media. Now, Kimberly has covered the news with an outside-the-beltway perspective. Her experiences as an investigative journalist ranges from national security issues like Gitmo, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 9/11 trial, immigration, foreign policy. She is a TV correspondent for CW6 News San Diego, One America News Network, and she streams live on Periscope, Facebook as we speak, and YouTube a little bit later on. Streaming all over the place. Hey, Kimberly, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Pretty good, ma'am. I was just having, for some reason, having a little problem there. I'm not getting you on my Facebook page. Can't quite figure it out. I know it's my fault. I made a mistake somewhere.
Well, I'm seeing you're looking at all the people that are following along the conversation right now, so it's got to be your side.
I got it now. Let's see. You are wearing
Purple.
black, I think, or with the beautiful kind of designs that are being hidden by her long blonde hair.
Yeah.
Now, see, we have a million more tuning in.
Well, you got to know your target audience, so.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much serious stuff there going on, and this is really an in-depth report you did, so I'm going to try not to interrupt you as much. You've heard that before.
Yeah.
But Kimberly wrote one here, Democrats rally to melt ice, and Trump invites ICE to the White House. He's got a lot of problems, but I'm going to tell you, if you want to take the number one problem in the United States today, it's real simple. It is the Democrats. I mean, boy, it's almost like we're being invaded. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and when we with the murder of Mollie Tibetts, her body was found this week to find out that this was another illegal alien in the country for 7 years, and you can't even see, Democrats, portray any kind of sympathy towards this young woman and her family that are now permanently separated. In fact, we heard Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, saying that she thought the top, issue with immigration was the family separations down at the border. Well, what about Mollie's family? They're never going to see their daughter again. So again, I think that, when you look at the grand scheme of things, you look at what the American people are looking at as top issues, and immigration is up there 1, 2, and 3 every single poll. So why isn't Congress doing something about this?
In Pocahontas, I've seen a lot of things on Facebook earlier today, people saying, he's got to be fired, They're not going to get rid of her. I mean, boy, these Democrats can say stupid things. And I'm gonna put you on the spot here, all right? Why is it they got Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, and now Elizabeth Warren? And just in case you missed it, she told the family, I'm sorry Mollie Tibetts is dead, but you got to focus on the real problem at the border, where parents are being temporarily separated from their children.
Yeah.
And I said earlier, well, the number one thing I'm going to put you on the spot on is, why is it all these Democratic ladies? I mean, Schumer says some stuff every once in a while, but the ladies are ahead of him right now.
Well, I think that, maybe the female politicians, especially if you're a woman, the media is more likely to let you maybe slide, unless you're a Republican, of course, but they let you kind of slide on comments. They might hold, a male counterpart a little more harshly, thinking that they can handle the criticism a little bit more. So I think that may be part of it. But I also just think, especially in the case of Elizabeth Warren, she's just a politician, and she's created this a career around her lie, in essence, saying that she's an American Indian and refuses to take the ancestry test to prove that she's an American Indian. Lied on her Harvard job application, saying that she was that. So you see that liberals can get away with a lot of this, because when the media goes after women, they go back and like, oh my gosh, you hate women, you're women bashing, you're an abuser. So I just think that may be why you see these liberal Democrat women come out and talk forcefully about it. They really think they're not going to get the blowback that the men may get.
And then it's the exception, for example, and I don't remember who the female reporter was, with Sarah Palin when she was running. And it was like, what kind of book did Katie Couric?
Oh, Katie Couric? Yeah.
Katie Couric, thank you. Yeah, Mike's always, boy, he's on it all the time. Anyway, what kind of books do you
commercial break.
Kimberly Dvorak. It is thekdreports.com. Don't go away. And don't forget, she's streaming live right now, live on Facebook. Kimberly Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K. Here with my guest, Kimberly Dvorak, award-winning investigative reporter. And looking at some of the comments, what Cindy talking about immigration. Man, you know, I saw this stuff and some pretty good comments early this morning on Fox, you know, and talking about the shooting and the death and all that. And, you know, and it's like, well, you can't use this, you know, as a political crutch, somebody's death. And I immediately, you know, think about Maria Espinosa and her group and the quilt.
Yeah.
Of all of the Americans who have been killed by illegal aliens. And I, you know, yes, the word illegal aliens, the main thing on that, the bumper, so to speak, is the fact that those people wouldn't be dead.
Yeah.
Chances are, I mean, possibility, yeah, they got hit by lightning later on or something, but all of those people wouldn't be dead if they had control of the borders. And the guy on Fox this morning saying, well, it's the drug cartel. They're the ones that give everybody permission to come into Mexico. I've never heard that before.
That's a new one. That's a new one. I mean, they do send a lot of drugs across the border, and I guess if you want to tie some of the increase in the number of overdoses we've seen in the last year, you can attribute that to the drug cartels. But I don't think that we can look at illegal aliens that are murdered or that murder Americans as something that, you know, the drug cartels are, you know, allowing to happen. I mean, A, you're giving way too much credit to the drug cartels, and B, that's just something that, you know, would draw more attention to their illegal activities, and they already have enough, you know, law enforcement after them. They're not going to add another issue to the pot, so to speak, to stir it up and have people come knock down their doors and take them to jail. You know, I think the thing that really struck me on watching some of the coverage yesterday and today was the fact that these last few illegal aliens that have actually killed Americans, they had jobs. And if these states and if the country actually followed through with the E-Verify work program, and you remember Trump passed that, the Congress passed that earlier this year. I wrote a story about it. And this is what captures, you know, this would like end working in the United States for people who are not here lawfully. Because
Kimberly, yeah, let me jump in here because E-Verify, yeah, and I was really pushing that the other day. Like I had a guest on saying, hey, the wall should be secondary, and E-Verify should be the really big deal. But now I understand that Riviera actually, the employer said, yeah, he checked out on E-Verify. So apparently he got hold of a really good phony name that was going to work on E-Verify.
Well,
have you heard that?
Well, I actually heard the company you work for walk that back a bit. They said they relied on the documents that he had given them. And in most cases, you know, they do, you know, what is a huge problem in America is identity theft. And so a lot of these people, they will buy an ID off somebody and then they hand it out to 10 different people across the United States. And if we were using E-Verify and that social security number was entered into the system, it would automatically come up saying, oh boy, you're working in Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Iowa. How are you doing all this in one social security number? That would, the red flag would come up, and that would end the working for, you know, for this country or any employer in this country, because they would have a way to flag that. And it's like an immediate flag. They put in that social security number, and like 3 seconds later, you're approved or you're not approved. And, you know, the left and the right as well have been very hesitant to implement this E-Verify that's been talked about for so many years, actually since 9/11. Is how long they've been talking about implementing E-Verify. And it was part of the 9/11 Commission report, who my friend Janice was one of the authors of. And it's something they've been pushing for a number of years, and nobody wants to do it because that will, in turn, probably drive the labor costs up, which I thought the Democrats were for, the increase in minimum wage. But apparently, you know, that would take from their voters. So I guess they're sitting in a catch-22. But this situation could have been taken care of if they had used E-Verify.
Reparations, ERO, which is a part of ICE. And you have some figures here that are pretty staggering. And this is the arrested ICE ERO for the fiscal year 2017.
Yeah.
And let me just throw these out at you real quick there, listeners. 48,000 assault offenses, 11,000 weapon offenses, 5,000 sexual assaults, 2,000 kidnapping, 1,800 homicides, 1,800 people. All right, and there you go again. Is it possible that the 1,800 people that, all right, let's say, oh goodness, let's go with 300 would have been killed anyway by some other means, you know, runaway car, right?
It does.
Hit by a train.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Let that soak in.
Yeah, but it shouldn't matter. I mean, we're a rule of law country. We used to be, at least. I mean, there are people that wait in line for years, and you know them. We both know people who've waited in line to get into this country lawfully. And this group, so if they're like prepared, and this is kind of my opinion, I think, on the issues, if they're okay with breaking the law and coming to this country illegally or overstaying a visa, that's the first crime they've committed by doing something like that. That means that they don't have too much of a problem committing other crimes once they're here. So, you know, for people to say, oh, they're just here for a better life and they're doing this and that. But when they come here, they're not committing just the one crime of crossing the border illegally or overstaying a visa. They're stealing somebody's ID so they can work. They're collecting most likely some sort of medical, insurance, so that when they go to the hospitals, their kids get taken care of. We educate their children. I believe, I don't believe, I know that FAIR, the Federation for Immigration Reform, they came out with numbers saying it costs America, roughly $120 billion a year in expenses for school and medical for these illegal aliens that do come to this country. And also, I mean, I go back and forth between saying immigrants and aliens, but it's actually U.S. federal law, and they actually refer to them as illegal aliens. And that's the term. And if Congress doesn't like that term or the left doesn't like that term, then you need to change that with Congress. That's the legal term for them. And I think it doesn't make them sound very nice if that's, you're thinking they're coming from Mars or something. But, we have a big problem in this country, and we don't know who is here. There's a lot of people we don't know who they are. So I have a little stronger stance on this. I come from a border state. I live down near the Mexico border in San Diego, and I see all the issues that we have in San Diego County. And a lot of this stuff could be eliminated, and they wouldn't come here if they couldn't work. So, I mean, you implement a couple protocols here, and what it's going to do is create a deterrence. So they can't do this. If they need, seasonal workers, I'm all for doing a guest worker program, but a lot of the people that come up here, they work and they send a lot of their money back down south. So they're not adding to the U.S. economy if they're sending that money south of the border to their family that lives, in Central America, Latin America, or Mexico. No.
Interesting, and I think, and you probably know right offhand, but somebody said it was Jimmy Carter that first said, don't be using that word alien anymore. You know if that was who it was, Jimmy Carter?
Yeah, it's been around since ICE has been around it. And, and that's another fact that, the left is getting wrong in this, I guess, witch hunt against getting rid of ICE. They've been around for a long time.
Who really got it wrong?
Yeah.
Who really got it wrong, and I'm going to say, whoops, somebody screwed up, all right? During the Obama administration, here comes the Dreamers, all right? Now, that's an acronym for, are you ready for this? Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act. Mm-hmm. They put it in there, and it's like, don't call anybody an alien, okay? Don't call anybody illegal.
Again,
well,
it's the official, it's what Congress, and it's written in our law. So that's exactly the term that they use. Now, again, people don't like that, and they don't like using the word illegal. They prefer undocumented. I mean, I don't think most of Americans really buy that one either. Because, I mean, again, you look at all the different polls, numerous across the, left, right, center. Every time they do a poll and they're asking what the top issues are, immigration falls either 1, 2, or 3 each and every time. And yet Congress still does nothing about it. E-Verify has died in the Senate.
The recent Gallup poll, immigration was number one,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason I really remember Gallup and all that is because global warming
Mm-hmm.
didn't even show up in the top 20.
Yeah.
There's another thing too, you know, how the Democrats want to change the history
Mm-hmm.
of the United States of America and erase that. Apparently, they want to erase the definition that you'll find in a dictionary when you look up aliens. Number one, a non-citizen inhabitant of a country. And they're just talking about not the United States, they say a
Any country, yeah.
A non-citizen inhabitant of a country, or someone from another planet. Okay? There you go. So what are they if they're not aliens?
Well, maybe that's why they don't like the terminology in it, but the fact remains that they are in the country illegally, and every time they sign on the dotted line, they're breaking another law. And if you look at Americans, if you were driving your car and you got pulled over and you had a suspended driver's license, you didn't have insurance on your car, that you would get a ticket. They would pull your registration on your car until you paid and proved that you had insurance and all this. And I've talked to a couple different judges in Southern California, and I said, what do you do in this instance? And they said, there's nothing we can do. And this one judge looks at me and said, you know what? I've been in court, asking why this person, doesn't have a driver's license. Obviously, he's in the country illegally. He doesn't have a driver's license. And I told him that he's going to have to pay these fines and he needs to get right with the law and all that. And he picks up his keys off the table. And the judge is looking over like, surely you're not going to go and get in a car and drive from the courthouse, which is exactly what the person did. And there's nothing that we can do about it because there are so many. And law enforcement just couldn't go after the sheer numbers of this. We don't have that kind of technology. So that's why, I see some of these comments with E-Verify. It is a crucial thing that would virtually cost nothing for the employer and the government to put this out. And it would curtail employment. And if they can't get jobs, they're not going to come here illegally. And they're more likely to get on the list if they really want to come here and be Americans and seek the better life. But for whatever reason in Congress, the elites, the establishment in both parties will not let this E-Verify go through. And like I said just a few minutes ago, I always hit this. It died in the Senate, which is controlled by Mitch McConnell. Why did this die in the Senate? Why did this not go to President Trump's desk for a signature, which he would have signed? It's a cure. It wouldn't cure everything in this country, but it's a start, and we need to start somewhere.
Right. Remember when President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder went after Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Arizona, and they were upset because he was stopping people and asking them for their identification. Mm-hmm. And then they said, well, it's discriminatory because you're stopping people who look like they came from Mexico. Yeah.
Well,
they had it out with him, but George Soros took care of that. So
but
all the money.
In San Diego, we had the very, very same thing with the Escondido Police Department. The police chief was just, he lived in, he was the police chief in an area that had a lot of, low income, a lot of illegal aliens living in his community, and they were having problems with hit and runs and drunk driving and all these other issues, not wearing a seatbelt, driving on sidewalks. He named off a whole litmus test. So we got together some money from the county, and once a month, they would, like at an undisclosed location, they would set up they called it a safety checkpoint, not a DUI checkpoint, a safety checkpoint. Make sure the car was insured, make sure they had their driver's license, all this. Well, how long do you think that lasted before the ACLU came in and said that you can't do something like that? And he was able to do this for roughly a year before they completely shut him down. But why don't you want drivers to be safe? When you're going out and you give the keys to your 16-year-old child to go out and drive, don't you want them to be safe from other drivers who don't know the laws, the rules? And a lot of them don't even speak English anymore, so I don't know how they're reading all the street signs out there. It's just, there's a whole litany of issues that come along with this. And if we, so to speak, just turn the spigot a little bit and stop the reason they're coming here, that magnet is jobs. And if we're able to do something about that, at least slow it down, then you're going to see the numbers start slowing down. And to use Romney's term, they'll self-deport if they can't get jobs. They will.
Yeah. The magnet, the greatest country in the world, they want to come over here, but come over here, don't change it. And, we have a line, and I know that it's 1 million plus. It's more than all the other countries combined.
Yeah.
The amount of people we take in to this country yearly. And about 40 seconds before the break here, Kimberly, but I really wonder, about the wait. The people that are waiting legally in line, and what they think whenever they see all the illegal immigrants coming into America.
Yeah, they have to be upset. They have to be upset. They are upset about it. And Rand Paul came up with this selection saying, you know what, if you want to let these people come in, then we're going to, say this year we're only going to allow 200,000 to come into our country to make up for those numbers. Of course, that would never fly, but he pointed out that that's what we ought to be doing.
Yeah. One of these days, I'm going to get this really intelligent person, Kimberly Dvorak, to write an article. The problem with the wait. Yeah. All right. We're going to take a break. Kimberly Dvorak, make sure you know how to spell that last name. D-V-O-R-A-K. You'll find her streaming at periscope.com, live on Facebook, YouTube a little bit later on. And it is thekdreport.com. Be back. CRN Calendar with my guest, Kimberly Dvorak, CW6 News San Diego, One American News Network, and live right now on Facebook, Periscope. A little bit later on, you'll get the award-winning performance on YouTube. In your ICE commentary, you bring up Janet Napolitano, and it's funny, the DACA, which is the unconstitutional thing that, Obama came up with, that was a memo from Janet Napolitano.
Yeah.
And then in your article, you talk about how the University of California, as we were talking about the magnet that drives them in here.
Yep.
The University she's in charge now of the universities in the state of California. Yep. And she's decided, well, we don't care if you're a citizen or not. Come on in here and you can apply to college and no problem. And good to get an education, no matter who you are. But once again, they don't have to stand in line.
No, they don't have to stand in line. And again, just think that, they're getting an in-state tuition. And if you sent your child to a different state to go to college, you're paying out-of-state tuition. But if you're an illegal alien in this country, wherever you live, you're getting in-state tuition. So that's already a given. I'd like just to highlight one thing that we didn't really touch on, but it's ICE's involvement in terrorism. And this was kind of a number that kind of shocked me when I was doing my research for the story, that, there have been 1,700 illegal aliens that ICE has picked up that have been tied to terrorism. And I didn't realize that the role they play on a daily basis in, following up with DHS and with the FBI and other agencies that are in charge of terrorism and finding terrorists when they come into this country. But they actually are doing a really good job with that as well. So it's also surprising that, the left in particular wants to get rid of ICE. That's been around for a long time, because we all know before it was ICE, it was BICE, Bureau of Immigration and Customs. And their responsibility is interior enforcement. So what they're doing is they're rounding up the bad guys who are breaking the laws inside the country. And somehow, if you turn on CNN, you don't get that side of the story. They just think that they're along the border or going to schools and ripping, parents out of, their kids' kindergarten classrooms. And it's just, nothing could be further from the truth. And that's what's really sad.
Pregnant women, arresting pregnant women, even though their husbands wanted for murder. They didn't know the lady was pregnant at the time, I don't think.
No.
But, the terrorists, the people don't listen to that stuff. All they listen to is the mainstream media and, look what they're doing to our children. They don't realize the great job that ICE does. Yeah. And it's, the fake news. The fake news has got hold of you, and the Democrats love it because it's the vote. It's the vote they're after.
It is. And this kind of shows you, in these numbers that you read off a little bit earlier, kidnapping, rape, It's just that those are staggering numbers. And if they're here for a better life, I'd really hate to see what they're here for if they're not here for that better life. Those numbers are staggering. Those numbers are unacceptable. And those numbers are fixable if we have a secure border and we implement E-Verify. Two very simple things we can do.
Yeah. And once again, 1,700 illegal aliens that sit off the little radar there when it comes to terrorism.
Yeah.
But ICE saved your, let me be nice, saved your rear end. Okay. Yeah. Well, Kimberly, we've run out of time again, and look forward to each and every one of these visits. And are you in D.C. or San
Still in
Diego
D.C.
today?
No, next week I should be back in San Diego for next Thursday.
Yeah. Got to visit all the Marines and the statues and the golf courses, and then she'll come back.
I am going golfing.
Yeah, DVORAK, and it is thekdreport.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Hey, immigration's not going away because we got David North, Center for Immigration Studies, coming up, and he's a former